Charles Mayfield, how we're doing?
Luke, I'm doing great, man. It's awesome to see you online and was great to meet you. What was that, a couple weeks back in the flesh in
Yeah,
Nashville?
beginning of June. Yeah,
Yep, yep,
that was
yep.
weird because I remember probably a month or so ago I listened to you guys or listened to your podcast with the Meat Mafia guys, and before that I didn't have your product or know anything, and I kind of put skincare on the back burner, or didn't put anything on my skin because I didn't want to get involved with using shampoos or soaps that I knew were pretty harmful. So I was just going bare, no, nothing. So it was good to see you and get a face behind the product for sure.
Well, I talked to there's a burgeoning market now of sort of men that are paying a little bit closer attention to this, but by and large, most guys, well, first of all, they don't think about all the skincare products, shaving creams and soaps, and not a lot of guys are moisturizing. But I would say that no skincare routine for most men serves them better than any of the junk that they're trying to get you to use. And
Yeah,
so,
I
yeah,
was,
no, I
yeah, yeah. If you want to
don't
get
don't
into
feel bad
that,
about your
just about
choices.
okay. Yeah, I
Don't.
mean, I guess putting nothing on my skin means I'm not putting in the harmful stuff on. So I guess we could go
That's
into
right.
that and just how you got into your product and doing animal products versus whatever's on the market now, which is a lot of chemicals and all that.
Yeah, so Farrow, which is that's our company, Farrow Skincare, and it's really a sort of a convergence of I've been a jack of many trades in my life, and so had a background in nutrition and fitness coaching, sort of through CrossFit and then just general strength and conditioning. That community introduced me to paleo. And so I've co-authored a number of cookbooks in the paleo space. So that was sort of my deep dive into nutrition. And then the paleo scene really pointed my curiosity toward regenerative farming a number of years ago. And so started a very small boutique uh, pasture-based meat producing farm back in 2016, Mayfield Pastures. And fast forward, it was 2019 ish. Got an awful sunburn, and I was candidly not much different than you, Luke. I didn't really pay attention to what went on my skin. I was paying a lot of attention to what went in my mouth for a number of
Hmm.
years, but and sort of took a minimalist approach. We can talk about sort of the weird stuff in a little while, but yeah, I had this nasty sunburn in an act of desperation, more than anything. I had been rendering lard from my pigs, and I got this culinary background, so I was cooking with it, and so yeah, act of sort of desperation. I mean, it was a bad sunburn, like one of those four
Mm.
alarm fire jobs, lobster red, and so lathered up on like a Wednesday night, and and I mean heavy, like put it on. And, in a matter of minutes, my skin, I say my skin ate it. Our skin is our second stomach. And it was literally gone. There was no residue on my skin. It just soaked in. And so that was really cool. Got up the next morning, put it on again. So two applications. And then in about 2 days, the sunburn was gone. I talk about this a little bit on the website, but I always like telling the story. But the sunburn was
Yeah,
gone.
it's a
That was
fun story.
cool.
So
Yeah, yeah. And so, again, I've got this 10, 15 year um, experience in the nutrition side of the house, right? So, you do a lot of like paleo interventions or a whole 30 or, whatever the case may be. But you get used to like, okay, at the end of things, when you've seen all these results and then you start reintroducing like a food or whatever the case may be, and you pay attention, like, how do I feel? What are my energy levels? What you just learn to pay attention. And so when my sunburn like went away and I didn't hurt anymore, it was fantastic. And so I started watching my skin, and lo and behold, over the course of gosh, 3 weeks, I never peeled. And you're a fair skinned fellow yourself. Anybody that's ever just absolutely barbecued themselves knows you eventually peel. And so that was really the light bulb moment for me. and again, this was 2019. So, started tinkering around, playing around with different fats and leading with lard. And, yeah, it's been amazing. We launched the company in January of last year, and took about a year and a half worth of like just product development and tinkering and all of that fun stuff. Right here in the kitchen, we still hand make all the products, and so yeah, that's how it got started, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today talking about skincare.
Yeah, I think more people need to like just think about it in general because if you think about people are going out in the sun, they mostly just think, let me throw on some sunscreen. It's not even like a thought. So did you ever use sunscreen before that or any like
Oh, sure.
application on your skin?
Yeah, I
So,
have, I'm a human being that's lived in the United States now for a long time. Ironically, and I tell this story all the time, like I can close my eyes right now and I can smell the Panama Jack tanning oil that my dad would lather on us as we went fishing when I was a kid, right? But it was an oil. I don't know what was in it, but it was an oil based sunscreen, and we had 6, 8, 10, and 12, and the lower the number, the darker you would get. And so, and I bought into all the skincare, sunscreen stuff. We're learning a lot more now about, well, first and foremost, the impact that seed oils and these high oxidative, super high in omega-6 fatty acid, nasty uh, seed oils that we're eating. We're learning more about the impact that has on our mitochondrial health and our skin health, and we've also been sold sort of a bill of goods as it relates to sunscreen. And I like to, with the paleo background, I like to look at it things through sort of an evolutionary lens. And in the last 100 years, we as a culture, and this is really globally, but certainly here in the United States, we've got this infatuation with being tan and getting out in the sun. And we live in this amazing society now that allows people the freedom, on the weekends to go to the beach or to build a backyard swimming pool. And so we've got all these things that attract us to sun during the middle of the day. And so we go out there and we lather up with this toxic goop that's got an SPF rating on it, thinking that's going to protect us. And in some ways it will. You have an SPF rating and it's technically blocking these ultraviolet rays and keeping us from burning. But a couple things are happening. On the inside, we've got various endocrine disrupting, hormone disrupting compounds in these creams, and we could talk about more of this later on. But we've also got this microbiome living all over our skin and in our stomach, and like we got like 5 to 7 pounds of microscopic organisms living, coexisting with each and every one of us. And so these preservatives that kill bacteria in a water-based cream, which is all the creams, they kill bacteria. And so when we spread them on our skin, they kill our natural microbiome. And so we used to worship the sun, right? As many cultures and societies worshipped it, and now it's more fear mongering. And so you got this false sense of security. As a species, again, Luke, rewind the clock 100 years. There ain't nobody hanging out by the riverside at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with the sun straight over their head without like a big broad hat and protecting their skin. Now, as soon as the sun is lower in the sky, go for a swim, whatever. But prolonged, high intense sun exposure is a relatively new aspect of humans. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying we haven't done that in a very long time. I just got back from a vacation with my kids, and we were no sunscreen. I'm tinkering with an animal fat based sun. I can't put an SPF on it without
Hmm.
running it through the FDA, but I'm playing around. You can put some zinc oxide in there, and there's carrot seed oil and various other essential oils that can help, prevent sunburn. But so I'd put a little bit of that on them. But, when it got to be about 11:30 in the morning, we're out on the beach doing whatever. It's like, all right, kids, let's come inside for a little bit. Let's eat our lunch. Let's just sort of cool off, chill. And then when we go back out in the sun, let's, if you had lunch, it's 1 o'clock, that, the sun's still straight up in the sky. Let's wear a hat. We got all this technical gear now, like super lightweight, dries immediately upon getting wet, shirts. And so, I sort of got them dolled up to protect them from the sun. And, outside of a couple of, right under the eyes and various spots, they were really good to go. And so, well, and you know that you've probably done this research, but if you graph incidence of skin cancer, and on the same graph you put SPF rating, okay, go back to like 1960, right? And so incidence of skin cancer from 1960 to now. And then you go back to 1960 and say, okay, what's the maximum SPF available on the market? It's probably like 10. Okay, I'm not sure, but it wasn't the 120 SPF that you see in some uh, sunburn lotions or whatever sunscreens today. Okay, so incidence of skin cancer, SPF rating, and then also use of sunscreen, like by consumers, number of units sold, however you want to measure that. All three of those lines precipitously track each other up, 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 up. And if the SPF had anything to do with reducing skin cancer, we'd see a downtick. If the use of skin, of sunscreen had anything to do with skin cancer prevention, we'd see a downtick, but we don't. We see all three of those lines track almost parallel for the last 60 years. So you tell me.
Yeah, it seems like it's something in the sunscreens, obviously, that's contributing like a major factor as far as, like you said, maybe like killing the natural like microbiome that would normally prevent like the sun from like harming us or something along those lines. But it makes sense that we would want to seek out an alternative, which I think is your product, because the sunscreen's not working for us right now. So it's just,
Well,
we shouldn't
yeah,
just
but
continue to do it.
that's right. And I tell people, you've also got to be a little smarter about your relationship with the sun. It will burn you. I mean,
Mm.
listen, and I see people, posting, I'm off seed oils now and I do this and I do that. And I've been out in the sun all day and I'm not burned. And, good for you. But I can tell you this, if I'm in the direct sun for more than an hour without anything on, and I do a pretty good job of keeping seed oils out of my diet and I eat really clean. I'm sort of ketovore, carnivore type ish. I mean, I eat pretty damn clean and I get sunburned. And so, it's this glowing orb in the sky that we really do need to respect. And so, again, for all your listeners out there, I don't think you should be wearing sunscreen either for a whole host of reasons. But having said that, when it gets to be noon, you probably ought to have a hat on. You probably ought to, and again, thank God we've got these amazing lightweight, totally get them wet, get them do whatever clothing, and go from there. But just have more respect for that fiery ball in the sky.
No, I like that you mentioned that because I was in Arizona and actually, like I got off the seed oils and started to like go out in the sun more, and I started to like get some like burns up on my chest. So I tried to like walk it back a little bit, and I've been using your product to try to repair the skin. But I guess we could go into like your product specifically as far as like it is a lard based product, and maybe some people are like don't even know like what lard is or don't want to put it on their skin.
Oh,
And I
dude,
know you
let's
have like
go.
a
Let's
really big like love for pigs, so can you just like give us your, I don't know, your 2 cents on pigs, on lard, on everything that you got there?
Yeah, sure. So lard. we'll have a fat lesson first. We use three fats
Okay.
predominantly in our product. So lard, leaf lard, and tallow. If your listeners are familiar with any animal fat based skincare, they probably know about tallow. Tallow is the rendered visceral fat from a ruminant, most commonly a cow. But you can have elk tallow, any ruminant, deer, the bison, you name it. But a ruminant species, multi-chambered stomach, herbivorous animal. Okay. Lard is the rendered subcutaneous fat. So we have predominantly two types of fat in us as a species. All mammals do. So you have subcutaneous fat, belly fat, back fat, just under the skin. And then you have a visceral fat, which is internal organ fat, predominantly kidneys. And that fat's function biologically is to protect the organs. Okay. So lard is the rendered subcutaneous fat, belly fat, back fat. I always think about Fight Club and the soap making in Fight Club, and selling the liposuction fat back to those ladies. But that's subcutaneous fat. Leaf lard is the pig equivalent to tallow. It's the rendered visceral kidney fat from a pig. Pigs are monogastric animals, so one stomach. Let me just cut to the chase. Pigs and humans share so much biology, okay, that we train our surgeons on them. Did you know that?
I only know it from another podcast that you said it on.
Okay,
That's the only
okay.
reason I know.
So we train our surgeons, the organs, how they're aligned, how they lay out, everything, their skin. Pigs don't, people don't think about pig skin per se, but pig skin and human skin are very similar. And so we train our surgeons on them. In fact, we use pig parts inside human bodies. A lot of cardiovascular surgeons will repair human hearts with pig heart parts, heart valves and various things. And so the biology is a spot on match. Now, as a farm animal, they're my favorite. They're gregarious. They're smart. They're, cantankerous. Pigs like to be pigs. And they taste absolutely delicious. Bacon is a staple in our household, but they're just my favorite animal. And the biology is so absolutely close that we could use pig parts in human bodies, right? And so, if I tell people the swine is divine, but the lard is hard. Okay, so this is an important point. Tallow and even leaf lard to a greater extent are visceral fats. Okay. Leaf lard is visceral pig fat. Tallow is visceral ruminant fat, again, predominantly cows. And so visceral fat, internal organ fat, it's not a storage organ, right? Everything inside our body has a biological function. Okay. And in the case of visceral fat, the function is to protect and pad our organs. Subcutaneous fat, the belly fat, back fat, the function of that fat is to store things, right? Those keto folks that are out there, ketogenic diet is a natural human diet. Most people would not be keto year round because in the fertile months of fruit ripening and various things, we'd load up on all these carbohydrates and pack on a couple pounds, right? And in that fat is stored the vitamin D we're storing from the sun, all the vitamins and minerals and nutrients from our diet. And so then in leaner times, we can pull those nutrients from our fat. That's what ketosis is in many respects, is storing and then relying on fat stores for energy. And so, the swine is divine, but the lard is hard. You have to raise a healthy, happy pig. This is probably the thing I'm most proud of with our company is, unless you raise a healthy, happy animal that is not only, has one bad day, tastes delicious, all that fun stuff, but you have to raise them in a way where they're ecologically putting more back in the soil, healing the land, sequestering carbon. This goes the same way for the beef. Um, so you have to raise a healthy, happy, well-fed, properly fed animal. Otherwise, that lard isn't very nutrient dense. It could potentially be storing toxicity from the environment the pig grew up in. Sadly, I think maybe just over 2% of the pork in this country is raised in a pastured environment. So 98% of the pork, all the pork chops you see in the store and the sausage and this, that, and the other, those pigs grew up in a house, never saw the sun, and had 1,000 of their closest friends, bumping up next to them, very crowded. Probably had some hormones or some antibiotics injected in them, just because the environment they grew up in is so toxic that they're perpetually sick. And so that's the thing I'm probably most proud of about Farrow is you cannot. My company does not exist without raising healthy, ecologically nurturing animals.
Do you mind if, yeah, so for tallow, would it be the same thing or no, because they don't have the same stomachs? Like would
Yeah,
tallow
no,
that isn't?
great question. So tallow again is ruminant visceral fat. Okay, and tallow's high in vitamin A. It's a low polyunsaturated fatty acid fat, which it's touted as that all the time, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. A ruminant species is going to give you a little bit more room with regards to bad diet equating to bad fat, especially visceral fat. Okay, so you could raise and all cows get grass for 16 months of their life, and then most of them, end up going off to a feedlot. Even in that feedlot setting, a non-species specific diet, it's going to fatten them up, right? But the fat that they're going to gain and store is more subcutaneous fat, and that's not where tallow comes from, right? And so you do have a
Okay.
little bit more room. Um, uh, in other words, you could use tallow from an industrial raised cow, and I would sign off on the fact that tallow is pretty clean. Now, looking at the other side of the fence, you want to raise the animal better, and you want to feed it its species specific
Yeah.
diet. And you want to help, you want to leverage the cow's uniqueness to build soil and sequester carbon and all those fun things that aren't really being done in the feedlot system. Those are terrible conditions for the animal. But if we're just talking fat, then I would say beef tallow from any beef is going to be pretty good. Now we source our tallow. I was sourcing it for my own animals, but we're starting to grow a little bit, and so I've got other farmers now that have the same conviction about pastured and ecologically friendly uh, animal husbandry, and so we're sourcing from high quality sources. But yeah, your intuition was right. You have a little bit more room with a ruminant species and their fat, just because they metabolize things completely differently than an than a monogastric pig does. Same with chicken.
Yeah.
Chickens are a monogastric animal. I don't, unless I'm in an absolute pinch, I don't buy store bought chicken or pork unless I'm in an absolute pinch, because it's just not good. And monogastric animals will metabolize and store their environment and their diet way more efficiently than a ruminant will.
So basically what you're saying is like if you go to the store and you get like the feedlot beef versus the feedlot chicken, like you're better off getting the feedlot beef because it's
Oh, yeah,
ruminant. So
yeah, always. So if you're making a protein choice at the store, uh, preferentially choose
because I think a
beef.
lot of people like go for like the leaner cuts of like chicken, just thinking it's like healthier. But like
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, I mean that's part of the psyop. Hell, we didn't eat
Yeah.
chicken 60 years ago. Brett and Harry did a big thing on this a while back. I mean, the chicken that we ate 60 years ago was like this little partridge. I mean, it was this tiny bird, and the chicken industry. I don't blame them for doing this because it's smart. They had this big contest. Who can grow the. I forget what the chicken of the future was. Maybe the name of the contest. And so through selective breeding, hatching, you've got to. We've gone from this little 2-pound partridge, 60 years ago to this gargantuan, uh, broiler bird, industrial broiler bird that grows from a hatchling to 5, 6, 7 pounds live weight in 7 weeks.
Hmm.
It's crazy.
So how do you think we like as a society get besides people just like spending their money, but like how do you think people make the change besides just educating them? I guess it seems like there's not enough options. Like some people go to the store and there's just not an option for like regenerative meat. So I don't know
Oh,
if you have any
stop,
ideas
stop!
behind that.
No, no, no,
Just
stop! Yeah. So listen, and I have to be careful here because I hate when people do this. Like, I would rather you eat the nastiest industrial chicken on the planet than a box of Pop Tarts. Like,
mhm.
there's good, better, best, right? And so, I get it. Everybody's on a budget and this, that, and the other. Let me tell you something. I don't think there's a cheaper way to eat than a carnivore diet, and we have to qualify that, right? Eating is about getting nutrients in your body. Okay, so the well, yeah, the grass finished ribeye that I'm going to have for dinner when we're done today. Okay, it cost me $20, right? It's like $16 a pound. It's like maybe $25. Okay, there is more nutrition in that $25 steak than $250 worth of cereal. You follow me? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, for your listeners that don't have access to grass fed or grass finished, don't have access to pastured eggs, then that's fine. There's good, better, best. You are way better off. Again, I said I'd point you closer to the beef aisle in a grocery store than the pork or the chicken aisle, right? I'd point you to the egg aisle. If those are great places to start. But yeah, every box of cereal you can put back on the shelf and pick up a pound of ground beef is an absolute fantastic place to start.
Mhm. Do you think the people that are buying like the feedlot beef though would be like inclined to buy your product because it's like a regenerative product, or do you just focus on the consumers who are like only wanting the absolute best product as far
Are we
as
talking
meat?
skincare or
Um,
meat? Okay.
so
Yeah.
like if you're
Um,
buying like strictly the best meat, you're probably going to be more inclined to want to buy your product than someone who's just buying the feedlot beef, I'm guessing. So I guess my question is, do you think like the masses would buy your product, or is it just like a specific niche for like people that are more inclined to be like caring about their health and sourcing their product and stuff like that?
great question. So it's not up to any one farmer to feed too many people. So let's start there, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, there's good, better, and best, and there is a consumer for every category, right? So, blanketly, would I prefer someone buy my product over a cheaper grocery store brand? Well, not if that's going to limit the amount of product they can buy, so that they're having to augment their diet with crap, right? So what's your family budget? Is it $1,000 a month to feed a family of four? Okay, well let's make some decisions about how much nutrition we can get into y'all's stomachs based on that budget, right? And so, do I want people buying my product? Of course I do, but I don't expect everyone to want my product, um, nor understand why it does cost more, right? Now, I
Hmm.
think it tastes different and better. And, there's varying studies. Again, if beef's over here in one category, and then you got pork and chicken. If you're gonna go all in on monogastrics, if you really really like chicken, I would preferentially tell you to try and find local pastured chicken. Um, it is going to be more expensive, but the nutrient concentration and density in a pasture based, you know, non-GMO fed, you don't have to go organic necessarily, but that's going to be the nutrition in that local pasture based animal is going to be way higher.
Do you think for your products, it could, so I guess getting back to like the skin aspect of it, obviously you want to reduce the amount of time you like are spent in the sun, but would you consider lathering up before you go out in the sun and then like if you get burned doing
Oh
the
yeah,
same thing after? And it is
absolutely.
proven to like decrease the amount of like burn from like lathering up before.
Well, I don't get as burned as I used to. I get a little edgy about making claims and stuff like that. But you asked me a direct question about what I do. Absolutely, I make sure that my skin is properly fed before I go put it out in front of the sun. Right? And so, is that moisturizing? Yes. Is that, this is my moisturizer. I've got like jars everywhere in the house. And so yeah, I think again, back to my childhood memories, when we go out in the sun, we had a number 6 Panama Jack tanning oil. It was an oil. And so, yeah, I think it makes sense to keep your skin hydrated and also to keep the microbiome of your skin intact. And that's again one of the deleterious things about most modern skincare products. This is good for your listeners. If on the ingredient list it has water, okay, which is 99.9% of skincare products, if on the ingredient list it has water, okay, so in order to make that cream, they took water and fat. And if you're lucky, it was a quality fat, but 9 times out of 10, it's some industrial, petroleum derivative or seed oil. And then they threw an emulsifier in between. And so they heat all that up and then they mix it and it makes this really luscious cream. The problem is you've injected water into fat. And so water is what feeds microorganisms and bacteria. So that cream, due to the fact that it has water in it, now has to contain chemicals and preservatives that not only disrupt our endocrine system and dysregulate our hormones. A lot of these phthalates and parabens and oxybenzones, they're all like estrogen signaling compounds. Not only that, they're napalming and killing, because it's their job, they're killing all the natural microbiome that's on your skin. Now, is it a thin layer? Is it protecting me from the sun? Hell, I don't know, but it's there, and we're killing it. And so, yeah, if there's water on the label of your product, I would tell you you shouldn't use it for a whole host of reasons.
Yeah, do you think there's a major difference then between like the cheaper products in the sun and skincare industry than the more expensive ones? Like would the more expensive ones then even have any value or like why would one be more expensive than the other besides
Oh,
just marketing?
great question. So, um, I think I've heard this story right. You know who 50 Cent is, right?
Yeah.
You know who 50 is. Okay, so 50 Cent made like $500 million, I think, on vitamin water. Did you know
Hmm.
that? He was an early,
No.
early investor in vitamin water. Okay. Do you know how he came across the idea of vitamin water? He went to a convenience store, and in that convenience store, there was bottled water. And again, if this story is inaccurate, but it's the story I heard, and he saw like 8 different brands of water, and one cost $1 and one cost $4. Right, so there's this spectrum of waters, and he's like, "Huh." So he buys one of each, takes them to a lab, tests them all, same water. So skincare is just marketing. I could go show you a half ounce French European eye cream that's the first ingredient's water, and it'll cost you $400. And it comes in a fancy box with all the things and there's some Hollywood starlet that's advertising putting on her face. If you took that cream and walked into CVS pharmacy and pulled your $30 half ounce eye cream off the shelf and you took them to a lab, I guarantee you there would be 90 to 95% correlation between the ingredients in those creams. And so
That's
it's all smoke and mirrors and advertising. And of course now it's um, retinol, hyaluronic acid, uh, uh, all these fancy terms. I mean, retinol is vitamin A, right? And I forget what hyaluronic acid is. Maybe that's a derivative of vitamin D, but it's all these sexy terms, right? Well, hell, it's just synthetic
Mhm.
vitamins they're pumping into these creams, again, that have other chemicals that harm us. And, it's 17 steps, and you need a different cream for morning than in the evening. And it's all part of this psyop that's got everybody, addicted to, frankly, Luke, products that age your skin faster.
Mhm. I've heard
Industrial
you talk about
skincare.
that too.
Yep.
Well, I was just gonna say, I've heard you talk about that too, where like you're like transparent with the fact that your product actually you need less of it as you keep using it, and like you use the example of like chapstick. Like everyone knows, like you start using chapstick, and then all of a sudden you need three things of chapstick because you have to keep using more and more. So I guess I don't know. Like your product actually has like, can you go into that? Like it has like vitamin A and E and like stuff that's actually
Yeah.
like nourishing your skin.
Yep. So this is why we say the Lord works in mysterious ways. Back to the symmetry between pigs and humans. So pigs metabolize vitamins A, E, D. That's the trifecta in skincare. They metabolize all three of those vitamins and a whole host of others mechanistically the same way humans do. Like vitamin D from the sun, right? And then vitamin A and E and B and all the others, through diet and environment. And so again, you've got this industrial skincare market over here, where most of the vitamin A, E, excuse me, whatever they're going to call it, most of that is synthetic stuff, right? It's manufactured in a lab and they put it in the cream. Well, it's like the plant-based protein argument, right? There's this many grams of protein in this Beyond Meat sausage. Well, there may be, but we as humans cannot metabolize that pea protein at the same efficiency that we would metabolize the same number of grams of, say, beef, right? Because we're not built to metabolize that type of protein as well. And the same goes for any synthetic vitamins, minerals, all the stuff that they put in skincare. If it's a synthetic, you're not going to absorb it like you would a natural. So, so we call it smart lard. I've trademarked smart lard because you have to raise a healthy, happy pig, but it's absolutely chock full of naturally metabolized and stored vitamins A, E, and D. And again, your skincare it's about a couple things. It's about pH. Okay. Our skin pH is basically neutral, but I think it's generally runs around 6.8 to 7. That's our pH. And a lot of the shenanigans and games that the skincare companies are playing is really making sure the pH of their, toxic junk matches our skin. Because if it doesn't, if it's too basic or too acidic, we're going to have a reaction. Okay. So a
Mhm.
lot of them, it's a chemical game. Okay. Here's the water. Here's the fat. Here's the emulsifier. Here's all the junk that we've got to put in here to keep it from going rancid. Okay. What's the pH of that? Okay. Well, now we got to add a little bit of this to bring the pH down, or add a little bit of this to bring the pH up. Right. And so it's a lot of this bullshit shenanigan games. Pardon my French. But yeah, so skincare is about pH. It's about um, the balance of lipids, so balance between polyunsaturated, saturated, monounsaturated fats. Again, pastured smart lard is a spot on match to human lipid biology. And then, this last one's just so intuitive. We're an animal. We're not a petroleum derivative. We're not a coconut. We're not a shea butter. We're not, there's a lot of things we aren't. We are an animal, and our skin, for anyone that's ever brushed up against a poison ivy bush, our skin eats things, and it eats fat, it eats oil. And so, you put our product on your skin, it recognizes it biologically. It's like, oh, I want some of that. And so it consumes it. Our skin is our second stomach.
Mm. And I was just thinking about like what we said previously about the skin cancer increasing as we use more skincare products. And so my question is, did we use animal-based fat prior to the invention of all these skincare products? And then also, what is the whole like re like what has to go into a skincare product for it to be considered like for use? Like, is there anything saying no phthalates? Like, are they allowed to just put
Oh,
whatever they
yep.
want in it?
Great
I guess
question.
those
Great
are two
question.
two questions, but you could go
Okay,
with
yeah.
whichever.
So we got two good ones. I'm gonna start with the second one first.
Okay.
And this was really what got me fired up. So I mentioned I had this sort of 10 to 15 year in health, wellness, nutrition. Co-authored these. I call it my paleo lens, and you've heard this. Your listeners have heard this. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. Right? Pull out the box at the store. There's going to be something on there you can't pronounce. You probably should put it back. Focus on real foods. Okay. So the minute I had this sunburn moment, and so what I started doing was, okay, the lard's awesome. All right. So what do, Luke? You go to Google and you say, how do I make my own skin cream? DIY skin cream. Okay. And there's a whole host of formulas. Take this much water, take this much fat, heat them to this temperature, put this, I was all natural. So I got some beeswax as my emulsifier, and I whipped up this stupid, awesome, luscious, amazing cream, right? And then in about 7 days, it would go rancid. It would turn black. It would smell like dead flesh. That's not a product, right? And so I'm scratching my head. So then I start dumping, go back to the Google. What are some antimicrobial essential oil? I'm not a chemist. I'm a farmer, lift some weights every now and then, right? I like to cook. So, I gotta kill this bacteria. Antimicrobial essential oils. Okay, so you load up with this oil and that oil, and I'm just playing in the kitchen. Water, fat, emulsifier, and all this oil. 10 days later, rancid. Problem, right? And it finally dawned on me. You've eaten bacon, right? You eat bacon?
Yeah, I had
Yeah,
some
you
today.
damn right. We can't be friends if you don't eat bacon. What do you do when you're done cooking the bacon? You take all the drippings out of the pan and you pour them in a cup, right? And
Mhm.
that cup, I mean, my childhood, we had an old coffee cup literally sitting on our kitchen counter, and it was just full of bacon drippings. And they'd just sit there. You spoon some out, you brown your pot roast, you spoon some out, you do this, you do that, but there's no water in there. The light bulb finally went off. Oh, it's the water. I got to get the water out of out of my creams. The point is, at some point, my paleo lens, right, shined away from the cereal boxes and shined on store-bought moisturizers. Okay. And so I want all your listeners to understand this. The preeminent Consumer Protective Act around skincare is the Food and Cosmetics Act of 1934. 1934. They wrote this act at the time, 1934, the only ingredients in skincare that required pre-market testing for safety were color additives. And in 1934, that actually makes a lot of sense because you can get some really nasty color additives from coal and various other things, right? You want something black, you want something red. Anyways, So 1934, the only ingredients requiring pre-market safety testing are color additives. They updated the act again in 1974 or 6, and then they updated it again, and I believe in the early 2000s. Both times, cosmetics were excluded from any consumer safety testing. So you asked, the second question you asked was, what do we know about these phthalates, and what can and can't we put into skincare, and what safety testing is out there, what consumer protection is out there? None. Absolutely no consumer protection, other than if it's got a color additive. Now, I'm not saying that these companies don't test their products. They have to, right? They got to get the pH right, and they got to do this, and they got to do that. But they're not testing them for how much these products help us. They're testing them to make sure they don't hurt us. And that is a very different way to test a product. You follow me? And so
Yeah.
what are the impacts of these phthalates and parabens and oxybenzones? Well, I mean, it looks like they've been shown to cause cancer. They definitely disrupt our endocrine system, which, again, a lot of them are estrogen signaling. There's a I forget what, I think it's called SARS. Everyone knows what VAERS is now, the Vaccine Injury Reporting System or whatever. There's a similar one in skincare and cosmetics. And, again, you can say the data's good or bad or not, but yeah, I think Procter and Gamble paid a bunch of money out in a SARS based claim a number of years ago around ovarian cancer and talcum powder. And so the answer to your second question is, if it's on a store shelf and doesn't spoil, just like you shouldn't eat it, you shouldn't put it on your skin. And it's a small risk, right? I mean, it's a little bit of stuff, but it's that ongoing exposure, right? We're putting sunscreen on every day that we go out in the sun. No, you shouldn't be doing that. All right, so remind me your first question. Damn it.
So I think the first question was based on the alternative. Like, did we use animal fats before these products came out?
I love this question. Okay, so you just graduated from college, right? So you're a young,
Yep.
fit dude, right? Okay, it's 2023. All right, so let's rewind the clock. Let's rewind the clock 150 years. Okay, which is in human evolution is like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of human evolution. 150 years ago, 99% of the planet had these appendages elbow deep in animal viscera on almost a weekly basis. Okay, you were slaughtering. If you were a farmer, you were hunting deer. In the winter, you were slaughtering. A cow in the spring. You were constantly as a person. And this is mom, dad, all the kids, everybody's like, we just forget that 150 years ago, if you wanted meat, you went and got that meat, right?
It didn't
You
go to the
raised
store,
that
was
meat.
it there?
And you did it on the regular because, outside of salt curing, which is amazing, one of the amazing things about pork, but outside of salt curing, there was no refrigeration. You couldn't just slaughter an animal today and refrigerate, wet age your beef for, a couple months to, or freeze it, right? And so there was this perpetual, and again, this was all of us, right? Outside of the elite people that, had the money to pay people to do all their hunting and bidding for them. Most folks were intimately covered in some form or fashion with animal fat all the time. And, we weren't caking it on ourselves. You don't kill the animal. I mean, if anyone's ever deer hunted and skinned an animal, when you're done, you're covered in subcutaneous and visceral fat, just from exposure. Add to that, and I've got pictures in my phone, at the turn of the century, early 1900s. If you were cooking, you went down to the general store and you've seen those popcorn tins, Luke, like, you the three popcorn. Okay, good. You're one of the lucky ones. You'll see them this fall because I brought them up, but you can buy a holiday tin of popcorn. This was popular when
Okay.
I was growing up. Everyone got a Christmas or a Thanksgiving tin, and it was plain popcorn, caramel popcorn, and cheesy popcorn. It's fantastic. But the point is, it was this huge. You know what a 5-gallon bucket looks like? It was almost like a
Yeah.
5-gallon bucket tin of popcorn. In the early 1900s, I got pictures. My cousin collects these things. I have pictures of 20-pound tins of lard. I have pictures of 120-pound antique tins of lard. 110, 15 years ago, if you cooked anything, you went to the general store and you brought home a tin of lard. And so,
And
you know,
during that time, was the lard like what we would now consider regeneratively raised? Like,
I would say it was a lot closer than the industrial market today, just because we didn't have the technology back then that we do now. So most of these pigs were living outdoors. They were, if you've got pastured pork on one side and then you've got industrial pork on the other, I'm sure you had a much higher, much higher percentage, of the total that was pastured pork. Pigs are very destructive. This is actually one of the coolest things about technology. So we have technology now. And when I say technology, I mean lightweight, very durable, portable electric fencing, solar, portable, lightweight electric energizers for like an electric fence, right? And so with pastured pork, they can't be anywhere for too long. And you also don't want them just roaming free. So you're sort of this electric fencing, and the same works for cows, right? So you need to be able to sort of apply a gas pedal and a brake pedal to manage animals across the land, right?
mhm.
Farmers, even so, when I was growing up, which was not that long ago, but long enough, we had some animals, and we had an electric fence that we kept those animals in, and that electric fence was on all the time because we didn't have the computer chips of today that can store and release a charge. Well, Luke, if you have an electric fence that has a charge going through it all the time, and a blade of grass, imagine this, a blade of grass falls over and leans into the fence, what's going to happen? Well, that grass is going to die because it's going to just get electrocuted, and then it's going to dry out, and then it's going to catch on fire, right? So even 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the technology that we had at our disposal to take these animals and move them, move them across the land and contain them was, I mean, it's absolute magic. And again, I mentioned pigs are smart, right? As soon as you train a pig to an electric fence, it will not mess with that electric fence ever because it can sense the electricity. It knows where the fence is, and it will respect it. Okay, because it's a psychological barrier. This is getting into the farming side a little bit.
Mhm.
There is no such thing as a physical barrier that can keep a pig in. I mean, you can pour concrete walls and you can do all this stuff. Sure, you can keep a pig in, but it's not as impactful or effective as a psychological barrier, right? And
Mhm.
so with very lightweight infrastructure, I can pick it all up and carry it, lightweight fence posts, all this stuff with very lightweight, highly effective infrastructure. I can now take these pigs, and I mean, it's literally like you're steering a car. Where do we want to go next week? Right? Here's the paddock today. Let's set up the paddock next to it. And then we just meander about the land. And when I was pasturing my own pork, we'd spend no more than about a week in the same spot with our pigs. But yeah, so you know, back to your question, yeah, I mean, what was pork and beef of higher quality 150 years ago? Well, I'm going to say maybe, probably, but I would also say we have the capacity today due to the technology and our knowledge of how these animals metabolize things and how they should interact with the land. I would say that we have the capacity and know-how today to raise a way better uh, pork chop than we could
Hmm.
150 years ago, right? Because it's not just about the meat; it's also about how are we managing the land, right? And so we've got the tools today, we've got the knowledge today. This is not common knowledge, but it's growing. And again, I'm incredibly grateful to come on with you today and talk about it. I'll come back, dude. We can chew the fat anytime you want, brother. I love talking
Yeah.
about farming, but you know as it relates to skincare, again, you got to raise these animals well. It's the same reason, whether we're putting it on our mouth or putting it on our skin, you want a healthy, happy animal that also coincidentally tastes delicious.
Well, it makes sense that that's the way it would be because, I mean, that's the way it was supposed to be, right? Before we
It's,
came in and did whatever we did to it that was not natural. So,
are you familiar with the work of Wendell Berry?
no,
He's an author.
I'll have to write it down.
I think you would enjoy his work.
Okay.
I think you would very much. I'm a big fan of Joel Salatin's work. Now Joel does a lot more applied farming advice, but Wendell Berry is it's an absolute must read. He's got a couple of different books out there. Anyway, I think you would enjoy. I'll dig into my library and see which one
All
I've
right. I'll
got. I can't
appreciate that.
remember, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. We can wrap this up. I appreciate you coming on and all your knowledge. Definitely a lot that you got there as far as farming and all that. So I love talking about that. So thank you.
Listen, man, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. The only thing I would say is to your younger male audience and female,
Hmm.
I've said it a couple times. Estrogen signaling, estrogen disrupting compounds. Like you're better off not using anything than using something. But if you're going to use something, um, give the lard a try. Uh, I mean, I hadn't had razor burn in 3 years, and I wake up every day. And I'm like, how the hell, So,
It's like
but no,
what are these people using before this? Before.
oh God. Well, yeah. I mean, and I've got to come up. I'm working on it now. I'm working on a shave bar, like a
Hmm.
soap bar that's formulated for just like lathering up and shaving with. Because shaving cream, again, guys don't think they have a skincare routine, but they do, right? If you're
Hmm.
shaving your face at all, what are you putting on your face? And candidly, I use shaving cream, just regular shaving cream right now. Every now and then I'll just sort of put a little bit of my skin food on and shave that way. But, um, but most men are participating in the skincare industry. They just don't view it that way. It's like body wash. God, all the body washes, like the fragranted body washes. I can't imagine that stuff. Deodorant. There's another one.
Hmm.
For
Would
your
you
dudes
say
out there.
would you say like in general, do you even like use any of those products then as far as shampoo, body wash, and deodorant, or you just avoid them entirely?
Great question. I don't use shampoo. Now I've made some test bars of soap, large soap. We're hoping to launch some of the products in the coming, 6 to 8 months. And I'll use that, but I don't, so not to gross people out, but I don't soap, but probably 2 or 3 times a month. Now I shower every day and I'll take a
Yeah.
washcloth. I exfoliate my skin and, I do all that, but I don't soap very often. as it relates to deodorant, I have just recently done away with the store bought like Old Spice deodorant. I'm tinkering now. I'm like the ultimate test bunny for all of my products, and so I've made some testing little samples of deodorant. I'm playing with those, and they work great. But I also went, I'll go for a month or so and not wear deodorant. Um, it's funny. A lot of the stink is diet related. Back to like,
Yeah.
diet and skin. And so if you're eliminating sugar from your diet, you'll find that outside of a CrossFit workout or some endurance race, you really don't smell. Um, so and there's hardly any time where a nice warm shower and just sort of washing yourself off, washing the day off, because we got to remember these soaps and God, now that the beauty bar, if it doesn't say soap on something you're washing your skin with, then that means that it's not a saponified product, which means it's got all sorts of other harmful chemicals in there, which is I definitely need to come back on. We need to talk more about skincare. But anyway, for
Yeah.
your dudes that are out there, yeah, I wear a little bit
Well,
of deodorant here and there. I don't soap that very often. I don't want, I got my hair cut today, just for you, buddy. How's it look? Pretty good. Um,
looking nice.
but yeah, so I will wash my hair tonight before I go to bed, just because it's got all sorts of little, leftover hairs in it. And so I'll just use my soap bar.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, like you said, as far as once you realize the body and well, what you're putting in your mouth and your skin is literally making up what you are. It's like you might want to change that and not make your skin I don't know, whatever the ingredient list is on the back of it. And then as far as what you're putting in your mouth, like, do I want to become a Dorito or an Oreo? I mean, that's questionable.
I
But
want to
yeah,
become a pork chop.
I want to become a ribeye. So
Oh, there you go. There you go. That works
yeah.
too. That works
All
too.
right. Thank you, Charles.
My pleasure, Luke. Thank you.